Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the payoff.
All right, Jeff, it is the Canadian Stampede. We are in Calgary, and the Hart family is coming home. This is Tom. I'm with Jeff. This is the payoff. Jeff, how the hell are you doing, my friend?
This is great, man. Not just Canadian Stampede, but in your house Canadian Stampede. You and I, big fan. Everything in your house, of course. This taking place, after the most recent NXT takeover in your house, whatever it is. And so, exciting. I'm looking forward to just good stuff.
Yeah, well, this hits on our theme of summer matches, but then it also hits on this in your house resurgence, which. Who the hell ever thought that, we'd get in your house back? I'm excited to talk about in your house throughout this show as well. Man, this is a really fun one. So quickly, as always, thank you for supporting the payoff. Couldn't do it without you. Best thing you can do is like and retweet our stuff on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. On all three, we're at Payoff Pod. That's at Payoff Pod. Let us know what you think. Tell us what matches you want to hear. Tag what guests you want us to get onto the show. And again, that really helps us, and we certainly appreciate it. Jeff, any other housekeeping for our loyal listeners?
Yeah, it's we try and cut it back a little bit here, but reminding everybody as well too that we give you that deep dive into a match every Monday, and of course those three parts: the build, the payoff, the aftermath. We bring them to you. You love them. We know how it goes. So we got a lot of reviews and write-ups on this one, and so we've got some good stuff there. A little bit of the aftermath, our scores. I'm interested to hear what our scores are. I haven't watched the match in full, so hopefully we got some good stuff that comes from that, but just all around good stuff. So I'll kick it to you first, buddy. How come you wanted to talk about this one?
Man, this whole Hart family, heels in the U.S., baby faces in Canada, it was just great shit. I mean, it was so good. The boos that, Brett would get in Detroit and Pittsburgh and all over the country, my God, I mean, hated him. But then they were these massive baby faces, 10 miles north of Detroit
Right.
and really all over the world. And it's so funny. And I think Bruce Pritchard is, pointed this out on his podcast, but, people in the U.S. don't dislike Canada. It's not, this isn't like, this foreign country that we're in war with and we have all these like philosophical differences with. It's Canada. But it's just so funny that in wrestling, for whatever reason, it's always been, this goes back, right? It's the Quebecers were heels and Dino Bravo was a heel and, this waving of the Canadian flag. And it's always been that they've been these like heels and these bad guys for whatever reason. So,
if you're a quote unquote foreigner, you're going to be a bad guy in wrestling. That's how it is.
But even like our like Mexico south of the border, you have like Tito Santana, the like white meat baby face, right? So it's just funny that for whatever reason, Canada struck a chord in wrestling lore. And, a lot of it probably has to do with just something in Vince's mind, right? He probably had a bad experience at the Canadian border one time, and he just thought that all these Mounties were heels, right? So, anyways, I loved it. This angle was so over, and dude, we'll talk more about this, but this is in a lot of ways what put Stone Cold on the map and made Stone Cold take off and really get into this Bret Hart feud and Austin 316's red hot. And man, so that's interesting. And this match, it's one of the, maybe not technically one of the best matches ever, but when you factor in the crowd, the atmosphere, all the real life stuff, the Hart family there, there's just so much about this. It's awesome. So I'm excited to cover this. And I'd say that, it maybe gets lost in the shuffle in terms of great matches, if you will, because again, it wasn't a technical 8-star classic. It was more of the atmosphere and everything else surrounding it. But man, what a great match. And historically, the family, I don't know if they were ever all together like this ever again. Certainly not on camera in this kind of wrestling setting, which is important because it's a wrestling family and they had the promotion and all of that stuff. So I know that's a lot, but man, this is going to be fantastic. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I looking at the kind of people, and we'll go over the card in a little bit here, but this match, this many workers in the ring. Like, I think that even like there isn't a bad name on this list. And so when we kind of start talking about who was doing it, some of them, like, I don't think we Goldust, we didn't respect as much at that time, but now like we know like Dustin Rhodes, like incredible worker. Like, a lot of these people, like, Legion of Doom, kind of knowing the kind of background that they had and things like that. I know we both watched some of those dark sides of the rings and, kind of hearing some of that stuff. And so a lot of these people too, I don't know if it's good or bad that they had their own episodes of Dark Side of the Ring. And so kind of crazy on that front. But I think just the quality of worker that was in this, like, a 10-man tag like this, like, would we respect it as much nowadays? Like, I don't know, like, but something like this to have a huge stable like we did going against these guys, like, I'm excited just to get into it and kind of, see what we got here, because I'm excited.
Well, then let's get into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
So here we are, WWF Canadian Stampede. It's Jeff, it's In Your House 16. Did you realize there were that many in your houses?
No, now that you're saying that, no.
Yeah, I don't know. You think In Your House, you're like, oh, would they have like 5 or 6 of those things? And then you forget, some of them were like In Your House Canadian Stampede, In Your House Hell in the Cell, In Your House, but actually In Your House Hell in the Cell is Bad Blood. But, they have these different themes. But the actual In Your House thing, there were, I don't know, I think it was over 20 of them. But, this is 16. This is the last year this is the last year they had 97, and then they switched. But, again, there were a lot of these things, and we've gone through the cards before, but they had some really good matches. And, we'll talk about that's the other thing I want to talk about during the match is, this kind of 2-hour card versus 3-hour card. So July 6, 1997. Okay. So pretty cool. It was the 4th of July weekend. So people may have had off. And then Sunday, July 6th is the pay-per-view, which of course was in conjunction with, the big stampede that took place in Calgary. So just a lot going on there. It's at the Canadian Airlines Saddle Dome, which I don't know if at the time it was Canadian Airlines, but I just remember it being called the Saddle Dome, right? So 12,000 in attendance, one of those buildings where you could have a big crowd, but man, they're on top of each other. My guess is there probably weren't a lot of luxury boxes inside the Saddle Dome, which means that the fans were just on top of each other. So again, this is one of those 2-hour pay-per-views. We can discuss the merits of, is that better? Is it worse? What you thought. Kind of fun dark match. We had the Godwins, Hog and Pig, Henry O. Godwin and Phineas I. Godwin, defeating the new Blackjacks of Blackjack, Bradshaw, and Wyndham. So kind of a fun match.
Match to start the card.
Yeah, pay-per-view starts out. Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley at the time. He's already paired with China by this point. Him and Mankind go to a double count out. So, it's interesting that Triple H Mankind feud, they did some matches back at this time, and they do a cage match as well. And then obviously at the end of Mick's career, they had some great memorable matches as well. Jeff, did you watch the documentary series, whatever you want to call it, on the network about Triple H and Mankind?
I have not. No.
Go find it. And for those of you listening that haven't seen it as well, go watch it. Really good. For whatever reason, and I can't remember the name of it, but they've got these, I don't know if they profile matches or feuds or what they call it, but it's a series on the network, and they've done different ones. They don't, I've never really seen it promoted on like Raw and SmackDown. They don't make a big fuss of them. They just kind of haphazardly release them, but they're really good. And so this one was it really centered around Triple H and Mick Foley. I talked a lot about their Royal Rumble and then their final Hell in the Cell match and the backstory of that and how, when Foley was, wanting to retire, should have retired. Really, really good stuff. They had Triple H, they had Steph, they had Foley. Some stuff that I didn't remember or know. But man, what a great feud that was. And you have to remember at that time, that really put Triple H on the map. That Rumble match he had against Foley, then defeating him at the Hell in a Cell, then he retains at WrestleMania 2000 in that 4-way match. So that was like, hey, Triple H is our top heel. He's a really, really big star. And that's when Austin was out as well. So really interesting stuff. But again, they had this match here. They had that also that memorable match in the Garden where Foley came out as Cactus Jack. So great stuff, but make sure to go back and watch that. The great Sasuke defeating Taka Michinoku, 10-minute match. Then we had the WWF champion, The Undertaker. Okay, this is coming off WrestleMania 13 when he defeated Sid. He would defeat Vader. Vader was accompanied by Paul Bearer. So, I got to tell you, man, I would have loved to have seen Vader in his prime in the WWF. Could you imagine Vader in his prime against The Undertaker, against Shawn Michaels, and really all the talent that they had there? I mean, even a younger Steve Austin. Give me him against Bret Hart. But, we got this beat up version of Vader, not his fault. The guy just, 200 matches a year.
Yeah.
Oh, and getting the shit kicked out of him. And he was just rough. And a lot of that was in Japan. And he was flying around. I mean, he wasn't some big man working some slow style. He was bouncing around the ring. So, I have not seen it, Jeff. That's one we're going to have to add to our list is a really good old Vader match because I haven't seen a lot of that. I mean, I vaguely remember some of his WCW stuff, but again, I'd love to see a match where we could see him in his prime. But we just didn't get that version here. And my goodness, they brought him in with a lot of hoopla and, put him with Cornette. And I just don't think he had it in the ring. Because remember, that was, the plan was to do a trilogy of matches with Shawn Michaels, the first being at SummerSlam. And then, it would go on to be, I believe, Survivor Series Royal Rumble. They ended up putting Sid in that spot. But man, I wish he would have had it, So anyways, we had that match and then we had the main event. So only 4 matches on this pay-per-view. And that, of course, is what we're here to cover. The Harts, which is Brett Pillman, British Bulldog, Neidhart, and Owen Hart against Shamrock, Goldust, Legion of Doom, and Steve Austin. So talk about a who's who. But man, I'm pumped to cover that. Just a couple other things going on before I turn it over to you to talk storyline stuff. It was interesting. The night after this, Nitro had, some ECW guys on. It's funny because, the whole thing was the WWF and ECW had this huge relationship. But remember, WCW was signing guys. I mean, they had Raven, Stevie Richards. They're getting these guys from ECW. Later on, they get Sandman and a whole bunch of other people. So it was just interesting that, I always find it fascinating. I'd love for Paul Heyman or Vince McMahon or both to elaborate more on what actually happened with the ECW, WWF stuff because, it was weird. They kind of had a working relationship. Vince was throwing the money, but then there were still guys going to WCW instead that were jumping ship. So interesting there. As I was going through some of the old PW torches, there was an interview with Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And again, keep in mind, this is, 97. What's funny, man, is those guys do a lot of interviews, and I feel like they say the same thing during every interview. It's the same shit that you hear from them now. Oh, we had the favored nations clause, and this is why we left. And I don't know. I mean, some guys, it's have you heard Taker on some of these recent podcasts, like Bill Simmons?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's awesome, right? Because you've never heard The Undertaker just talk like a normal human being. Then there's guys like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash where, I've heard them say the same shit 100 times, and there's just some guys out there that, I don't blame him for wanting to be out there in the public eye, but it's what new is Kevin Nash going to say at this point that I haven't heard him say 200 times? He was saying the same stuff in 97. It's 23 years ago.
And they've done a million interviews. I think that's why The Undertaker, that documentary is so good because we haven't ever seen that type of stuff from him.
So let me ask you this. What do you enjoy more, the Michael Jordan documentary or the Undertaker documentary?
If I had to pick, probably the Jordan one.
But they're both really good, right? Like, I mean, you can make an argument for both. That's why I was like, obviously, like, I have a lot of friends that make fun of me for how much wrestling I watch. I'm like, dude, Taker doc, it's as good or not better. I've gotten a few guys to watch it that don't normally watch, wrestling, or they have the network type thing, but they're not watching regularly. And like, man, this is really good shit. And I'm like, dude, I told you. My one buddy was watching with his wife recently, and he's like, she loved it. I'm like, yeah, man, it's really, really good. Anyone can watch it. I think the Taker doc is as good or maybe even better than the Jordan one. That's how much I like it. I'm not saying that as a wrestling fan. I'm just saying it like as a fan of interesting stuff. I think that both of those, the Jordan and the Taker, are better than Dark Side of the Ring.
Yeah,
Dark Side of the Ring. We'll talk. I want to talk more about it. I think it's good. I think it's good TV. It's better than flipping channels, right?
We're getting huge ratings from.
Oh, I know. It's really good, but it's at the same time, like, this entire season, I don't feel like, man, I learned a lot. I think the Benoit episode I did. I thought the UWF stuff was crazy, but some of it, like the Road Warriors, like, yeah, I kind of knew all this. So, anyways, that's really it. So, huge crowd, ton of merch, huge gate. People went nuts for this, man. This was like a holiday in Calgary. So, how did we get here from a storyline standpoint?
Yeah, so I'm going to go way back on this one. And of course, like this event, taking place really summer 1997. It was July 1997. But I have to take us all the way back to the original Hart Foundation. It was them splitting after WrestleMania 7. So you had the Hart Foundation, which was Bret and Jim Neidhart, kind of going their separate ways, getting into singles competition, doing their own thing. Obviously, Bret, both of them had success, but you had Bret after this point, which, match we've got lined up for future, Mr. Perfect, the Intercontinental SummerSlam 1991, just an incredible match, great match, one that you and I both have wanted to talk about for a while.
I think this summer is the summer.
This summer's of course. And so, kind of doing that, but then him also going on winning the World Heavyweight Championship when he beat Ric Flair. That was in Canada. So a big piece of that there. You actually did have, though, the Jim Neidhart, even though they kind of split and kind of went their own way, him forming a new tag team. It was the New Foundation. It was with Owen. And so part of this, too, is you got to remember, like, they are like the Canadian Sons. Like, it was a big part of who they were. Everybody knew that. Like, it's one of those, like, kind of like the hometown pop. Like, they would literally like the country pop. Like, they would, like, you couldn't do no wrong. Like, no matter what they were doing, whether face, heel, any of that stuff. So that was back, 1991. They kind of existed. They were there in that kind of time frame, and they kind of had that. So what you had, though, was you had in 1997, the year obviously of this event taking place, you had them reforming. And as we kind of said in the opening here, it was the Pro Canada and like really British, because of the British Bulldogs were as well too. And then the anti-American. You had all these guys here, though. And so part of it, though, was you had WrestleMania 13, which was that March of that year. Bret beat Stone Cold in, of course, the classic submission match. That was the match of the year, 1997. From that, though, you had kind of the turns of Austin becoming the fan favorite and Bret becoming the villain. And we've talked about that match a lot, obviously, and we have that where, you had your very clear cut face heel. And like you said, really like the Stone Cold persona shining through, kind of being that kind of antithesis to, what people wanted, but just, he was going to get the cheers, whatever it was. So, but after that event, though, and kind of having that, you had Bret reuniting with Jim Hart, Owen Hart, Bulldog, and it was actually Brian Pillman as well, too. And they formed the new Hart Foundation. Pretty much everything they did. And I still vividly remember to this day them walking out to the ring with the Canadian flag and kind of planting it, in the middle of the ring. And it was always kind of there. And so I remember that just being a huge part of their stable of how, and of course we know, like, just, that we don't have the exact numbers, but how many events take place here in the U.S. or continental U.S. versus, going up to Canada or different places, especially back then, like that wasn't happening. And so, you didn't have as much of the European type stuff, or it was very one-off. Like it just wasn't happening as much. But the biggest piece of this was this Hart Foundation, and that was their part of their gimmick was like just degrading the U.S., all of its people, all this other stuff. I mean, it worked. You can't say it didn't. There's sometimes when they kind of go that angle, it doesn't always work. But they kind of had it on this one where it was absolutely just fantastic. And so that was how they would always get that reaction of just like bringing the flag out, kind of making the name for themselves as this new foundation, doing it that way. So you really had to, because of how this all kind of, played out, all this different stuff, you had a lot of people, like we said, that were involved in this one. Because of where this took place, really the kind of event was really built around the Hart Foundation, even though that they were the heels in this instance. Some of the players, you had different feuds coming into this because of like just individuals and things like that. And so over the years, that year, they would feud with, Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, Psycho Sid, the Patriot makes, sense there, the Legion of Doom. So some of these guys, they would have like, just kind of tag matches or singles matches, which is why some of these people were in the ring. But then you also had like, some kind of future storylines that were set up with this one as well too, which we'll get to a little bit in the aftermath, kind of what was happening there. We'll definitely talk about Stone Cold and Owen and things like that. So just a lot of different angles for who was involved in this match and why. But it really just led to this point of you had just the absolute, oddly enough, and we'll see it from when it happens, the heel tag team or team stable of the Hart Foundation taking on really this group of people that they had feuded with over the last couple of months, individual, just a lot of different things that brought this one together. But you had them as those people as the faces going into Canada versus the Harts as the heels, which will play a very big role in kind of how this plays out. So a lot of different angles, just, different things happening, but good stuff with the build. So Tom, what are your thoughts?
Dude, it's such a good build. I mean, there's just so many layers. This is like as good as a build gets, right? You have the fact that this has been, you traced it back to the early 90s, but you have elements of this that have, built over years, not for this storyline, but it fits in, right? So this is like years in the making if you add all these things in. You have the real life component of it, which always adds more to a storyline when it's, not just all scripted, but there's real life stuff. You do the family, you do the hometown crowd thing. All of that. And it took place over a long time. It wasn't, oh shit, we have another pay-per-view, let's throw these guys in a 10-man tag. This was building and simmering for a long time, and it continued after this. These guys, as you'll get into after this match, these guys really collectively were SummerSlam, later on in the summer, so the following month. So anyways, let's jump right into this. For those of you who want to watch with us, it's we're going to start this at the 1 hour and 15 minute mark of In Your House Canadian Stampede. That's the 1 hour and 15 minute mark of the network. And with that, it's time for the payoff.
Ho! It's time for the payoff.
All right, dude. So here we go. We got everyone in the ring. The Harts just entered, dude. Heroes welcome. It was just the difference in them coming in. You could just see it in their eyes. You could see how it was like. I remember Neidhart coming in. It was just like, it was, it was a Super Bowl. It was like the biggest thing in the world for these guys.
Give us a little sound right now so we can kind of.
Yeah, of course.
So you've got Brett and Stone Cold.
No, that was interesting. You hear what JR just said?
I missed it. Yeah.
Oh, he's like, and there's some cameras here ringside filming a documentary about Brett's life. That would be obviously the screw job documentary.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
That's kind of.
Yeah, they didn't know that. So starting off, you've got Brett and Stone Cold in the middle of the ring. Really everybody else was kind of John, but the two of them really just kind of staring at each other, which was a kind of a good setup. And so,
you can't get a hotter start than these two just pummeling each other, right?
Just back and forth trading blows. Yeah. And a real hot start. Yeah. And this is one of those.
Everyone's standing. Look at them. I mean, everyone's on their feet. I don't even know if they're going to sit during this match.
And so, this is one of the extremely hot starter, right? Brett kicking Stone Cold in the corner. The camera shaking.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those old buildings. There's probably nowhere to put the camera that wasn't shaking. The whole building was. Hey, so when I say in your house, what's the first thing you think of?
For me, there isn't one kind of individual kind of event or anything like that, but I do like these are just like tight shows. Like that's what I remember these as being, is just like it was, you didn't, back then you didn't have, much more than a 3-4 hour pay-per-view, but you had and all these matches were good. And then you really capped it off with like something like this of just kind of having it. And I think that's how these are successful. And, we've heard the rumors lately with kind of everything happening of just like them wanting to do some tighter pay-per-views.
Well, that's the word I go to. It's tight, right? I mean, it's like, it used to be that, hey, you got 10 minutes, go out there. But now, I mean, guys know that the show can kind of end whenever. So, I mean, if 10 turns into 15, oh, well.
Right. Yeah. They're not. Yeah. They don't have the hard USA stop time or any of that. Even then they would run over. Like,
did Edge and Orton need to be 45 minutes long? No. I mean, so sometimes less is more. Again, I was entertained, but I mean, I think that, we could have trimmed 10 minutes off the weight room scene and probably been okay.
I think everybody kind of, agreed with that. But then some matches, like, if you can put on a 60-minute Iron Man or Iron Woman, great. Like, there's a time and place for that stuff too. And I like, this is that type of card where maybe, something like that wouldn't have a home here.
$1 Million Dream does the reverse. This is the one he beat him with at Survivor Series. Little callback there. Austin kicks out. Still just Brett and Austin.
And so these two already, we've got a couple minutes now here, and just these two guys, missing, kind of going for him on the rope.
Oh, by the way, the reason I asked you what you thought of when I said in your house,
yes.
Two things I always think of are Todd Pettengill and then the actual house entranceway.
Yeah, and that's what, of course, I can't not acknowledge that. And yes, the house setup, I think that's one. The NXT logo kind of threw it back to that. They used kind of the same colors and stuff like that, which I thought was pretty good.
Big bull Neidhart in there. I love some of those old stories about Neidhart. What was he, a shot put? Was he shot put or discus? Or I think he was shot put.
I forget.
Like he owned the record. I mean, he's just a hell of an athlete. Played for the Raiders.
I remember him too because he's a big dude. Like, and I always remember him doing that pull down of the beard, and he'd like twist it. He had that long, thin beard, which was always
big boy back then. I mean, I know like at the end of his life, they showed him on like Total Divas a little bit with Natalya. And I mean, he was big then, but kind of was always this similar size. Wow, look at the kick. Wow. Shamrock was awesome, man. I know we've talked about him before. Haven't covered a match, but I wish they would have done more with him, man. I thought he probably was a bad promo, but I mean, and I may have said this before on here, dude, if you would have had him with like a Paul Heyman, forget it. He didn't have to say a damn word.
You put him with the right mouthpiece. Yeah, absolutely. And he did a lot, like he, in Japan and all this other stuff. And he was out there, but and you forget too, like he wasn't in, I was kind of looking at it right now. He wasn't in WWF for that long.
Nope. Like 97, 98. I mean, he debuted at 13 and he's probably out there within like 2 years.
And so, world's most dangerous man, like, yeah. And so it's just one of those. But yeah, and that's one, like, he's still a scary dude. Like, he's a big dude. So you got Pillman in the ring now.
I wish they would have explained, like, I mean, I was 13 years old at the time. I wish they would have explained why Pillman was in the Hart Foundation more. I mean, I get it. He trained there, but, I've seen, people were like, no, he was part of the family. He was super close with them. Like, I wish they would have given a little bit more context there. The tough part with Pillman was he barely wrestled. I mean, remember, he, tragically died not that long after this, but I mean, he was hurt, so he barely was able to wrestle.
Well, and that's too, every time, if you haven't noticed, and for those of you at home, like, every time the Hart Foundation does a move and even acknowledges the crowd a little bit, they go nuts. Like, they're clapping, like, even like that was just like a backbreaker. Like, there's something you don't see every day. Pillman trying to tap out Shamrock, grabbing his wrist and slamming his hand down on the ring. There's something you don't see every day from a heel.
So I've had the chance a few times of meeting people from Calgary. And not non-wrestling people, right? Just like, I think randomly I met some guy at a golf course one time. And of course I have to like ask about that. I'm like, yeah, wasn't there like a big wrestling family from there? And it's just always interesting because it's not like that big of a place. So everyone knows who the Harts are, where the Hart house was, like, Owen was in my, high school or something. I mean, it's just it's always interesting. Like, it's happened to me a few times. When I hear Calgary, my ears perk up. And
You've got
Owen and Goldust in the ring.
You got Owen and Goldust. You got everybody, and again, the crowd losing it for Owen. Like,
so cheering. Let's talk Owen, Dark Side of the Ring. What'd you think of the episode? What'd you take away from it?
As you and I discussed, like, we've said this, previous weeks. Like, I thought ahead of time that maybe that she had the footage and they were going to show the footage. I'm glad they didn't. It was still hard to kind of see, I've heard the stories over the years, but
is there footage online? I'm pretty sure there is. I certainly wouldn't watch it.
I haven't looked. I don't know.
I thought there may have been some stuff, but I don't want to see anything. In fact, you and I talked about it. Just even seeing the blood on the ring was not.
Yeah. And that was, I think, that piece of it, like the police photos of just like how high up it was. Like, you kind of get that sense for it, and like seeing the blood on the side of the ring, hearing that, like, how he broke the boards under the mat, and so wrestlers, like, there was that divot where he hit, which is just like disgusting to me. I get it, like, how she feels. Especially when she pulled out the carabiner that they used to, like,
yes.
She's got that in her garage, and just like a tote where I store, like, like old Legos, like, just and that's why you can't judge a person or, kind of know what happened until we kind of see those types of things. I thought overall it was well done. But I was going to say, like, I fully understand why she wants no affiliation whatsoever with the WWFE, because I wouldn't either. Like,
well, so here's the thing. Two things, and this is, you may have heard me say this before. I say it a lot in like politics. I say it a lot in different areas. Two things can be true at the same time. Okay. And Owen Hart should be in the Hall of Fame, and Martha Hart shouldn't allow him to be in the Hall of Fame, right? Her viewpoint is completely understood, right? So it's like two things can be true. Like, yeah, of course, who wouldn't want him in the Hall of Fame? Obviously, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, it would be incredible if we could celebrate him. Does his family have every reason to feel the way they do? And, his widow, his kids? Yes. And so you have to just try to find peace with that. And at the end of the day, if you're, as a fan, really worked up about it, you're not the one that died. You're not the one that lost a loved one. So they have every right to do whatever they feel, is best for his legacy. And again, two things can be true. Yes, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Yes, they have every reason to prevent that. I get it, right? And I get both sides of it. The whole thing just sucks, man. And so there were some really powerful visuals in there above the catwalk, blood on the ring. Really, the carabiner, really, really tough stuff to watch. And, the takeaway for me is, I forgot just how negligent it was. I mean, he probably shouldn't have got up there. They shouldn't have been cheap about it. They shouldn't have had the thing happen in the first place. It just sucked. At the same time, Sting had done a variation of that, 50 times? So just the whole thing just sucked, man. And God, the point was made. Can you imagine him working with Eddie and Benoit and Edge?
Yeah, the people that came after him. Yeah.
And then I just, I forgot with some of those highlights just how good of a worker he was. I mean, I love the personality, but he was just such a good wrestler. And man, I mean, just from a professional standpoint, the career that he could have had with a few more years in the Attitude Era. And he would have come out of that Blue Blazer thing strong. They also put Hulk Hogan in a mask and made him Mr. America. And it was entertaining for what it was. It wasn't the end of his career, So it's like, I think they could have gotten out of that Blue Blazer with him being more over and done something really great with it and made him a main eventer. And I believe that, if he wouldn't have died, he would have been a world champion. So,
and there's an ebb and flow to, their
I know. You forget that's exactly right.
And how he would have eventually and I get it. Like at that time too, it's hard to, imagine what he because with all them leaving and going to WCW and him having to deal with some of that stuff, I get it. Like that's gotta be tough. But I at least for me, I have hope that he would have come out on the other side of all of that. Man, those fast kicks. Jesus.
I know. It's animal there.
Well, and I kind of switching it to the positive. Well, one, I didn't Godfather was on those a lot. I didn't realize how Godfather was involved in so many of these different angles and matches because he was supposed to be the match against against Owen before, he fell. And then also he was the king of the ring and kind of involved in that. And they interviewed him with so just his.
Going nuts for Owen there. He did the kind of a different variation of the drop kick off the top rope, and then he does the kip up. God, Owen was so good. And you had mentioned Goldust earlier.
Yeah.
And, dude, just because of that stupid, I don't want to say stupid, it's iconic, but just because of that gimmick and that outfit, you forget what a big son of a bitch he is. And I met him in person, but it wasn't until really AEW where I was like, man, he's a big dude. And a really,
Dustin
really good
Rhodes
worker.
versus Goldust. Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
Legion of Doom going for it here.
And so that one too.
Oh, and they hit it. They hit it on Owen. Doomsday Device on Owen.
And here we brawl now.
Hart breaks it up. Yeah, and here comes the big brawl. But man,
I like that because Taka Michinoku had a match earlier on the card. I appreciate the Taka is God sign, the guy on the camera side. Well, this is one too. So we talked about it.
There you go. One of the Hart brothers just tossed a beer at Austin. I bet this ends well. Now he's got the chair.
So yes, this is the family kind of attacking Austin, all that stuff. Yeah.
Bruce.
So I don't think we even think we're halfway through this match at this point, and the crowd is absolutely ape shit.
It's just been nonstop action. It's funny because a 10-man tag, you mentioned this earlier, it could just be such a shit show and thrown together and mean nothing. And then you get a 10-man like this where they just keep coming in and out. You're getting all big moves. It's just one after another. It's been nonstop action. You have just fantastic workers in the ring. Everyone okay, here's a question for you. Is everyone in here a Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
Okay, so Austin's in, Legion of Doom's in, Hart Foundation's in, Owen obviously should be in. Bulldog is going in? He was supposed to be this year?
Yes.
Pillman I don't think is in yet, but
he is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Pillman will be. Who's left? Goldust will be. And I think even with all the AEW stuff, he'll still go in. Jericho will still go. Do you agree with that? Jericho will be a WWE Hall of Famer. Goldust will.
I think it may have to be after Vince, I say dies, but he's going to outlive you and me. But I think he should be.
But I think he will be. I think they reconcile. Jericho didn't leave on bad terms. He'll come back.
And so
now we get the Hollywood Blondes in the ring.
Yes, we do. Flipping him off, terrible stunner. But it got it off. Yeah, I think if nothing else, you have to include these guys in the conversation.
Yeah, so everyone's. Oh, and I guess the only one we left out was Shamrock, and I think he gets in just based on who they put in.
And I think that either way, he is a Hall of Fame caliber person.
Yeah, you do the UFC stuff, and he was doing the bare knuckles UFC stuff. He was doing everything back in the day. So I think in totality, Man, hitting him with a fire hydrant here. I actually have different fire extinguishers in Canada, apparently. I've never seen an all silver one.
See, that's just one of those, or it's one of the industrial ones, whatever it is. The classic now.
He invented this. And I think the first time he did this may have been against Austin Survivor Series. I remember the first time I saw that, I'm like, holy shit, man. Figure 4 on the post.
That's just one of those moves that, again, like you don't see it anymore. Like why, like, and we always talk about like wrestling repeating itself. Like this is one of those, like, why don't we see more of these types of things? It's the classic, like, like Taker walking the ropes, or like just some of those things, like, that it's been lost to the, to history and time on some of the stuff, which is unfortunate, but yeah.
Don't you wish the Hart House was like a museum? Like the city had bought it, and you could like still go in the dungeon and see like the ring they had in the yard and stuff. I just think that would be so cool. I just find that place to be fascinating.
Well, and I remember this was that era too, where like they sold that so much. Like it was always the Hart, or the Stu Hart's dungeon.
Remember they did the Owen Shamrock match in the dungeon.
Yes, and so and that's one of those where like you couldn't watch wrestling and not have them talk about it at least once.
Was that the first cinematic wrestling match ever?
You know what? That's something that we'll have to look into.
Well, you had that. You had some empty arena matches. I mean, I'm just talking in terms of matches that could have been stop-start, right? Like they didn't have to be filmed all the way through or whatever. So, I mean, I know they weren't like cinematic, but still, it's kind of interesting, right? Like no crowd, like.
And that's how, like that, just that type of storytelling, obviously I say the Hardys did it really well. There were some bad ones in there, of course, too. You had that was the House of Horrors, the Bray Orton one. Like that was not good.
I don't even remember that.
Oh, that was recent.
That was at wrestling. That was in front of a crowd, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, the House of Horrors one was when remember he burned the house down in the woods.
Oh, I don't see. I just remember that happening. I don't remember that though. Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry about that one. That one, not good. So that was, where Orton, like there's that gif of him staring and kind of, not going well. We talked about Owens. What'd you think of Legion of Doom's Dark Side?
What's funny, there's 3 Dark Side of the rings in there. There's the Screw Job, there's the Road Warriors, and then there's the Owen Hart one.
There really is, yeah.
And I mean, Pillman could be one too.
Davey
Boy and Dynamite could be one.
And they've already said that season 3 is they haven't officially said it, but like there's no way season 3 doesn't happen. It was like Vice's highest rated programming ever.
Yeah, they'll have to do it. Yeah, I'm actually surprised Vice gives them such a hard time. Guys, isn't that crazy though that there's probably 2 more Dark Side of the rings in that ring right now? I mean, it's something with Bulldog and Dynamite you could definitely do, and then Pillman, I think that'll definitely happen because I can see his son wanting to do it.
At least, yeah.
Wow, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, and kind of looking, there hasn't been a ton. I'm kind of looking at a list of like cinematic matches. There hasn't been a ton over the years, but
so Bret Hart in the ring working over Shamrock right now. Bret and Anvil's a tag team, the Hart Foundation. Do you love them, like them? What's your feeling?
I always loved the Hart Foundation. Like I think that this one, I think heel face, and when I would, when we were younger, I didn't, there was just the bad guy, the good guy. We didn't know the terminology. It was kayfabe still alive.
Well, yeah, the Jimmy Hart package was awesome, right? And then they became good guys, and that was cool too. What's good about them is, I love tag teams that dress the same colors theme, but they had the big guy, little guy, the bull and the worker type thing, which is kind of cool, right? You think tag teams, you think, well, Shawn and Marty were the same guy, and the Young Bucks were the same guy, and the Road Warriors the same guy. It's kind of cool when there's a contrast between the two, huh?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of those, like, we got Shamrock and Bret kind of working in the ring right now. Shamrock's, God, he's just jacked, like scary.
And he was fast. He was like a really, really fast
striker. Yeah, absolutely.
He's not a huge guy. I met him, but he's still jacked.
He is. Yeah, he's not towering over everybody else. And so now we got some outside the ring action.
Ooh,
Shamrock getting tossed over the table. So if you had to pick, I guess, out of this, and we've had some of these matches, like, who is your kind of favorite in the ring right now? Like, if you had to pick out of all these guys and taking their whole career, like, who would you pick as like your one top guy in the ring right now?
I think the easy answer is Austin.
Right.
And
yeah.
I'd say the easy answer and the right answer in my mind. some people love the Road Warriors. I like them. But again, remember, I wasn't watching the NWA in '85. So maybe I missed their best stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, the Austin's the biggest star in the history of the business. But aside from him, dude, I the more I watch of him, the bigger of an Owen Hart fan I am. I mean, the Calgary stuff he was doing with the flips, and no one else was doing it then. I know they were in other parts of the world, but no one was doing that in Calgary. Then he comes in as the Blue Blazer, and I mean, it's pretty awesome, man. Like, pretty great as the Blue Blazer. So I'd say my second favorite in that ring right now is Owen Hart. What about you?
Owen. I think I'm with you. I think Austin's the easy pick on this one. I think at least I remember more of like me being a Brett fan, like not to, Austin's Austin. You can't not like him. But I think for me, like Brett would probably be the one I'd have to pick. I have kind of a hot take though on this one, like seeing him in the ring at this point, like I like, and I said it a little bit, like I can't, like, I got to give props to Goldust, or you got to give props to Goldust.
I mean, that gimmick could have lasted about 2 months if the wrong guy was in it. Like, right. He was so good.
And so he's currently 51. And so even if you say, like, he was in his, mid 20s when this match was going on, like, like, yeah, is that math right? Yeah, that math's right. And so mid to late 20s, like,
wow, Bulldog and Goldust superplex. Those are two big boys, man.
Oh boy, that looked like it could have gone rough, but yeah. Well, and Bulldog, like he pressed the Road Warriors earlier. Like he was one that like just this. He was a monster of a man in regards to strength. Yeah. And I remember I always loved his finish, the running power slam too. I thought Braun's using it now, but it makes, sense for both these guys, but I always enjoyed the running power slam.
So as both guys are down right now, let me ask you this, best in your house match ever. I think the three that you could argue would be Mick Foley and Shawn Michaels and Taker in a Hell in a Cell in this match. Do any of those three stick out for you as the best?
I remember Taker Mankind. That was the Buried Alive match.
That's a good one too. Yeah. And
so I remember that one as being really good. I'm kind of looking at a list of main events at this point. There is a lot of names on here that like this is Stone Cold and Taker had a Buried Alive match. These are some that we can add to our list. Casket
great matches.
Yeah, casket match. Just to give you a few of them, Goldust Undertaker casket match. I remember this one, or don't remember this one, but Camp Cornette, which was Vader, Owen, and the Bulldog versus the People's Posse, Shawn Michaels, Sid, and Ahmed Johnson.
Well, that was supposed to be the Ultimate Warrior, and then Sid had the sub for Warrior because Warrior and Vince got into it. Warrior no-showed.
You had Brett, Stone Cold, Undertaker, Vader, and a Four Corners elimination for the.
That's a great that one we need to watch. So Bruce was talking about that on his podcast a while ago. I totally forgot about that match. I went back and watched it. It is a great match.
That was In Your House 13, Final Four was that one. So, and you see a lot of this.
Brett and Bulldog had a really good one-on-one match when Brett was champion as well. I remember that.
Looking at some of these kind of matches, you got Shamrock in here a few times, Taker, Michaels, Stone Cold a lot in here as well too. So, a lot of different people. Stone Cold and Dude Love going at it twice in a row.
Those were good matches. I remember them.
So all of these, are ones that like, and you even had Stone Cold and Vince in a cage match. And so that was actually the last In Your House prior to this NXT one.
Valentine's Day Massacre. And that was the point where they were giving them a tagline and making them 3 hours, I believe.
Yeah, it was, like I said, as they got kind of later and kind of doing that. And that card as well, too. That was a huge card. That was almost 10 matches on that one, too. So
why does everyone struggle to put the sharpshooter on? Like Austin was having trouble with it, too. I mean, I've done it 50 times to people. It's not that hard of a move to put on.
Well, and I wonder, like, because they talk occasionally of like the wrong leg and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
I like just the application. Maybe we are doing it wrong. Like, who knows? But I've always heard that. But yeah, that's one of those. Well, and that's like the Charlotte in the figure eight and trying to lock in the figure eight. I'm wondering if that was part of it's like the unwritten code of like you have to struggle if you're not Brett or something like that.
I think they just really do struggle.
Yeah, see, it's just it's weird, but you figure it's one. Yeah, like how many times have you done it in your living room? Again, and grabbing Stu Hart now. So Austin fighting the Hart family at ringside now. Just absolute chaos. Brett rolling Stone Cold back into the ring. And then the quick roll up while Austin is distracted from Owen.
Place goes nuts. So the match is over. They're still fighting. Got another Hart that just flipped over the guardrail. They're lucky this didn't turn into a damn riot. So the match is over. Owen wins. We got to watch out. We got to watch what ensues after this. Got all 10 guys in the ring pretty much.
Just
referee's
brawling.
coming out to stop it. Now there's a Hart coming in. Bruce.
Is that IRS? Oh, no, it's the security. Yep. Police and security now in the ring.
All the security guys in Canada look like IRS. That was an honest mistake.
Sorry, and security that could be the Mounties. I don't want to, don't want to offend anybody here.
So that's Bruce working over.
You see Joe Briscoe on the side. Austin just kind of hanging out on the outside at this point. They've kind of started to clear the ring a little bit. You don't see this a whole lot anymore either. That's another one. Like this kind of ring filling, like, multiple referees trying to break everything up. Like it's just one of those things. Like, again, like I think I've said it repeatedly, trying to get, the stables and do more of that stuff and factions. You just don't see it. And them like trying to break it up right now. It's just not something that happens.
Well, and I'll say one more thing before we jump into the aftermath. But I mean, that's the thing about these stables is, Brian Pillman's better with these other four guys. Jim Neidhart's better with these four guys. They're all better being part of this. They all look like bigger stars. They're all more interesting when you put them together. And so we'll just close with the fans just going nuts.
See, what was Brett's music playing? Yeah.
The whole family would come in and the place would go nuts, man. But what an awesome moment. So
you've got the Hearts. I was to say you got the Hearts and like the family now celebrating the ring and the crowd going just nuts. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Let's jump into the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
All right. So initial thoughts, dude.
Great. Just great. We're still kind of got it on right now. They're kind of waving the Canadian flag in there. I think just a lot of action, real hot. Like it's one of those where just good stuff.
This is as good as pro wrestling gets, man. It's great stuff.
Yep.
So aftermath, what happened? I know there's a lot, so give us the Cliff Notes version because we can talk for hours about what happened in the ring, outside of the ring. It's just crazy.
So aftermath, we can talk. The immediate aftermath, you have Austin coming back to the ring with a chair. It once again kind of starting the brawl to, he hit Neidhart. And then you've got just kind of dogpiled on each other, like a Brett throwing like actual like shoot punches. And so, which is good stuff. But what you had though was after this one, kind of moving forward a little bit here, Stone Cold and Brett obviously having their match of the year, kind of, doing what they did, kind of went back and forth. But you actually had Stone Cold starting to feud with Owen after this point. He actually attacked him the next night, which is what you got this feud. it led to really the kind of infamous match at SummerSlam 1997 for the Intercontinental Championship. This was the botched pile driver that we all hear about. I know it's one of those where I've seen the video once and don't want to see it again, where just too much of Austin's head was exposed underneath Bret. It wasn't like a tombstone where he kind of went down on his knees. It was a sit out pile driver where Austin, like, just it felt like the top third of Austin's head was exposed. And he's talked at length about what happened, where he just felt his neck kind of compress.
It was like 4 inches. I mean, it was just such a massive, amount that you've never seen in like a tombstone or anything else.
Well, and you wonder too, like some of the ability of some of these guys, because even in that moment, Stone Cold was able to pin Owen and kind of pin him for the win on this one. I remember like him crawling, could barely move, but got the win. And of course, had to relinquish both the tag championship and the Intercontinental Championship because of how hurt he was. I want to point out, too, I still got the match on in the background here, and Austin is handcuffed, flipping off the crowd as he's walking up the ramp. So I don't want to miss that aftermath because it's that good. So, of course, though, 1997, just a huge year for the Harts and kind of all these people as well, too. He had to give up, and then, he did recover, but then, of course, you had Hart actually going on and beating Stone Cold again at Survivor Series. That was 1997. You had all these different things. All these different things kind of happening. Of course, the screw job as well too, kind of playing into this. It just all kinds of different stuff. And so, with that then too, kind of some of the people that were involved in this one, you also had Pillman, and of course we had the kind of I say it's not classic, but the infamous was this the
about the gun?
Oh, the gun was later, previous to this. But yeah, I'm mixing this one up with another one. But and so you had the screw job as well too of this. And so that was what led to the Hart Foundation kind of breaking up, kind of having that. You had Neidhart and who was it, Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog, leaving, because they weren't, Bret leaving, all this other stuff. It was Owen who stayed. We kind of know the story at this point of why he stayed and kind of what happened there. The gun was the previous year, but anyways, it kind of dealing with it. So just a lot of different things. I think a lot of this hinged after this of like you get into the screw job and what happened. Everybody else kind of continued to compete, continued to be a part of this. And you have to acknowledge too, like we said at the beginning of this, that like these guys came in as the heels and came in as they're left as like conquering heroes though of Canada, like just absolutely got over, absolutely like were loved by everyone. Fans, American fans make me sick, like crowds in the sign. Like these guys weren't going to be booed. Like these guys came in and really left, and it just we know the kind of tumultuous times that came after this, but, everyone still had, I say successful careers. Everyone was still kind of involved in things. And so overall, it was just, it was good stuff. It's good to see kind of, how this played out and kind of everyone involved continued to have successful careers.
Well, it's just sad because you're watching the peak of this family, and God, it's just so many bad things happened not long after that. So It's really sad. Yeah. So,
yeah.
All right. So tell us how this match was reviewed, and then let's give our payoff scores and hit the road.
Yeah, so you've got the PWI. Bret was 1997's most hated wrestler, which kind of speaks to it's weird the reception he got at this, and them being the conquering heroes versus Bret being voted the most hated wrestler. Along with that, though, Owen was the third. And so kind of interesting, how this was received and kind of how this played out. We talked about him during the match. Shamrock was also voted the most improved wrestler that year. year. And so this match took place about halfway through the year. So he still had a lot in the tank after this one. So really good stuff at this point. What you've got then after that is kind of some of the write-ups. I'll start with the Pro Wrestling Torch. You've got the match was never spectacular from a technical standpoint, but the wrestlers in the feud, especially Brett and Austin, are so over that it energized the wrestlers, and even basic moves and redundant save routines seemed special. All of the personalities had a chance to shine a bit during the 25 minutes. 4 stars. A couple different things that they kind of have from some different write-ups and just kind of that I pulled it. Sometimes less is more, and this show proved it consistently. The WWF's 2-hour pay-per-views are more entertaining than their 3-hour marathons, which we can all agree on that even still.
Isn't that crazy? People were saying that back then.
Yeah, and so even then they kind of knew. And so what made this show great was the rabid Cameron Indoor Stadium home team style Calgary crowd. They elevated a very good 10-man match into one of the most memorable I've seen. The atmosphere watching at home was even better than some previous matches. The Hart Foundation, particularly Pillman, Owen, and Brett, and Steve Austin looked like they were having their times of their life. Thank God the Hart Foundation and the WWF had sense not enough to try and turn the crowd against them. The finish of the show may have not been out of Wrestling Heel, the finish of the show may not have been out of Wrestling Heel 101 handbook, but it was exciting and entertaining. Obviously, the Wrestling War is responsible for the rise in quality of these pay-per-view shows, and I think the trend in fits and starts will continue. So, which, yes, we saw that, them kind of going back and forth. The Observer newsletter, this one, like the whole show, it was 151 votes, 100%. Nobody even gave this one a thumbs down.
Wow.
Just great. And so, yeah, which is kind of weird to see. And so for the rest of the world, it was strange at the same time to see Bret Hart and WWF's lead heel being presented as a hometown legend, getting a Hogan in his prime response, and being shown and portrayed as a role model who had lines a mile long waiting for autographs at public appearances over the weekend and accommodated everyone who asked. Or how about seeing Owen Hart, the pesky little brother, work a spectacular babyface-like performance, climaxing with him saving the day and leading the good guys to victory, and then celebrating not only his entire family in the ring, but hugging his baby, or seeing Davey Boy Smith walking his wife down to the aisle and kissing her before the match started to a thunderous applause. Some main event heel. And what about Brian Pillman, the loose cannon? There he was helping 82-year-old Stu Hart into the ring so the father figure of Calgary wrestling could receive a well-deserved standoff at the end of the night. Yeah, and so that one ended up getting 4.25 stars. So you got 4.25 stars, you got 4 stars. All around, they loved it, and I think they kind of touch on. I'll kind of transition into my score here. I think that they touched on a lot of the thoughts I had as well too, and kind of what they did. I'm going to give this one an 8.5. I think that, like you said, just how it was portrayed, the people in the ring, like everything happening. I think it's hard to. It was just great. Like there's no way to kind of look at it and not enjoy it. And, especially knowing this, like we said, like knowing the story, the build, all these different things that were happening. Like, yeah, I can't any lower than that. I feel like would be a disservice.
Everything that you read in those reviews is dead on. I'm giving this a 9. The only thing that I think could have made it better is a little bit more brawling, maybe, a table spot through the announcer table. Like, I think there could have just been, the actual wrestling of the match was solid, but it wasn't like off the charts. And I think that maybe if there was a little bit more intensity of, again, a really good table spot or a little bit of brawling up the rampway into the crowd type stuff, that's the only thing that would have made this better, is just in-ring intensity. But that being said, I got this as a 9. Again, the build, the real life stuff, the storyline stuff is out of this world. It took years to get to this point. It's the hometown. It's the peak for this family. Just incredible stuff. So that's all I have, man. Close us out.
Yeah, same here. Just, good stuff all around. This is a fun one. It's one that, you kind of always remember as kind of happening, but the kind of details of it and how we got there, of course, with time, just kind of hazy. And so I was glad we revisited this one because this was a really fun match to kind of watch and kind of enjoy. So, and of course, as always, like we started the show, subscribe to the show, make sure to leave those positive reviews, spread the word about the show. We enjoy bringing this to you every week. We're coming up on an anniversary for ourselves, a year, 50th episode, all this different stuff. So we've got some exciting things in the pipeline. I know that we're going to bring to everybody. So make sure you're following us at Payoff Pod, all that social media. We're going to keep bringing you all that content. So, Tom, what do you got to take us home on this one?
Nothing, man. I think this podcast is the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. Thank you, as always, for joining us on The Payoff.